Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the very first meeting of the Interim Joint Standing Committee on Natural Resources for the 2023-2024 interim. Members who are joining us virtually, please be sure to keep your video on so we know that we do have a quorum. And please also be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to minimize background noise. And please remember that the chat feature is only to be used for technical assistance from our broadcast and production staff team. Will our secretary please call roll?
Senator Goycochea?
Here.
Senator Scheibel? Assemblywoman Anderson?
Present.
Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod?
Here.
Assemblyman DeLong?
Present.
Assemblyman Gurr?
Here.
Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch?
Here.
Chair Pazina?
Present, and thank you so much. Please record Senator Scheibel present when she arrives. Our agenda today will include introductions, a brief presentation from staff, the appointment of members to the Subcommittee on Public Lands, and presentations from the National Conference of State Legislatures, the Desert Research Institute, Nevada's Division of Forestry, and a presentation of water resource management. Before we begin, though, I'd like to make just a couple housekeeping announcements. The committee will be paperless, meaning that all materials will be provided electronically. Anyone who'd like to receive electronic notification of and access to the committee's agenda, minutes, and final report can do so by signing up on the Nevada Legislature's website. All presenters are asked to make sure to turn on their microphones before they begin presentation. If committee members should have any questions during or after the presentation, please identify yourself each time you respond to a question. This really just assists our secretary in completing the minutes for the meeting. Oftentimes as well, we do ask that you spell your name the first time you introduce yourself. During the interim, meetings typically have two opportunities for public comment, once at the beginning and once at the end of the meeting. Members of the public may provide testimony in different ways, all of which are listed on the agenda. To call in for public testimony, please dial 888-475-4499. When prompted to provide the meeting ID, please enter 828-4539-8349 and then press pound. Broadcast and production service staff will indicate to you when it's your turn to speak. We ask that public comment made in person or by phone be kept to 2 minutes so that everyone interested in speaking can be accommodated and to ensure that we can get through the agenda in a timely fashion. We ask that public comment made in person or by phone be kept to 2 minutes so that everyone interested, again, can do that in a timely fashion, and we're urged to avoid repetition, much like I just did, for comments by previous speakers. If you'd like to provide written comment, please either submit via email before, during, or after the meeting to nrinterim@lcb.state.mv.us or mail them to the Research Division at 401 South Carson Street, Carson City, Nevada, 89701. Or you could fax any comments into 775-684-6400. What we're getting at here is we really do look forward to public comment, and we will offer you a couple opportunities to do so. However, before we go to item 2 on the agenda, public comment, I'd like to hand it over to our Vice Chair, Assemblywoman Anderson, to make a very special tribute.
Thank you, Chair. Today, I'd like to make a tribute to former Assembly Member Jason Geddes, Regent Emeritus. He served from 2002 to 2004 in our body, and he served on this committee. I'd known Jason since I was a senior in high school, and he was president of ASUN over at UNR. Jason had a love of Nevada and a love of our natural resources that has not been matched by many. He would always make sure to do everything he could to preserve our beautiful state and to remember that the preservation of that state, of our state and of our natural resources had nothing to do with party and everything to do with celebrating and remembering that the land that we live on, we want to make sure that our children have as well to celebrate. And so I just ask that we remember his spirit as we start our proceedings over this interim, and just take a moment of remembrance for Jason and the work that he did for us. Thank you, Chair, for that time.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Anderson, and may we all remember the wonderful work that the former Assemblyman did for our state and the incredibly generous contributions of his time and efforts toward the natural resources community. We're going to move to item 2 on the agenda, public comment. So let's start our first public comment section for today. Is there anyone in person who would like to come to the table now, either in Las Vegas or Carson City, to make public comment? I'm not seeing a rush to either desk. BPS, is there anyone on the phones?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but we have no callers at this time.
All right, thank you so much. We will have another opportunity at the end of today's meeting, but seeing no more public comment at the moment, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is committee member and staff introductions. Item number 3, we're going to start with our members in Carson City and then come back here to Las Vegas. Members, when introducing yourself, please note the district that you represent, your history in the legislature, and your interest in the Natural Resources Committee. I think we're going to go ahead and get started with Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Natha Anderson. It is my honor to represent Assembly District 30, which is basically the heart of Sparks. Actually, I call it the heart of the Truckee Meadows because it has Sparks and a little bit of Reno in there as well. This is I just finished my second term, and so I'm very excited to be on Natural Resources. Both terms, I've had the opportunity to serve on it. For me, one reason why I love being on this has everything to do with that beautiful lake that's very close to my house, Lake Tahoe, but then also just the natural beauty of our state and making sure to preserve it and celebrate it. Thank you so much. Would you like me to hand it over to Assembly Member?
Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, you're up next. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Chair. I am Assemblymember Selena LaRue Hatch. I represent Assembly District 25 in Reno. I just finished my freshman term in the Assembly, and this is my first interim. And I think my connection to natural resources is I grew up on a ranch, so I have a lot of agriculture and water background. I'm also a great outdoor enthusiast. And as many people know, I teach geography, which is all about the human relationship with the earth. And so I'm very much interested in all of the topics in our purview. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. Let's move over to Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Rich DeLong. I represent District 26, which is basically southern Washoe County, includes Incline Village, and also the community of Verdi. As far as natural resources, I have a bachelor's and master's in geology and a second master's in natural resource management. And I've worked in the mining industry my entire career. So I have a lot of hands-on experience dealing with natural resource issues, particularly in rural Nevada.
Thank you very much, Assemblyman. Assemblyman Gurr.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Bert Gurr. I represent District 33, about the eastern third of the state of Nevada. My interest in the Natural Resources Committee goes way, way, way back. I've been a hunter, a fisherman, an outdoor enthusiast, snowmobiler, pick something. I've been outdoors most of my life, a guide. I have a deep, deep respect for our eastern third of the state and the western side. I don't come over here except for this much, but when you cover 50,000 square miles in a district, you don't get much time to travel the rest of the state. But I have a deep background in it. I was on the Wildlife Advisory Board for the better part of 15, 16 years, so I've been outside a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblyman. And we are going to move back to our members in Las Vegas, and then we'll introduce our staff. Senator Goicoechea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Pete Goicoechea, representing Senate District 19, and I'm 312 miles from home, but I can look out the window and see my district, the west side of the Las Vegas Valley here. So, again, I've been involved in especially the public lands. I was actually twice appointed to the Interim Committee on Public Lands as a county commissioner representative. I don't remember what those years were, but it was way back in the 90s. And I have spent 10 years in the Assembly and 12 in the Senate, and enjoyed working with. Always, I think one session I wasn't on an interim committee on public land, not on public lands, but natural resources, and but it's been a great experience. Third generation rancher. I'm not going to say I understand the issues, but I've been involved with a lot of them. So with that, it's always been a pleasure serving the people of this state, and I thank you and I thank the chair for the ability to be here again.
Thank you so much, Senator. And I had the pleasure of working with Senator Goicoechea this past session on the Natural Resources Committee. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Shannon Bilbray Axelrod. I represent Assembly District 34, which is basically due west of here. I am a third-generation Nevadan. I have served 4 terms in the Assembly, 5 special sessions, which is crazy, and served 3 of those terms on Natural Resources, serving as vice chair one of those terms. I love Nevada for all the reasons that people have said, and one of my favorite things to do with my family is pulling our fifth wheel and visiting those Nevada state parks. So we kind of have everything, and we are here to protect it, and I'm happy to be on this committee. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. I'm fortunate to serve as the chair of the Interim Committee and served as the chair of the Natural Resources Committee in the Senate this past session. My name is Julie Pizzina, and I serve in Senate District 12 here in Southern Nevada. It covers West Henderson, Green Valley Ranch, Silverado Ranch area, and huge fan of the outdoors, visiting all the trails in the pass and the parks with my husband and 2 dogs, and served previously on the Nevada Conservation League Board. Incredibly fortunate to be here today, not only with just phenomenal members from around the entire state of Nevada, but also some incredible staff members. I've been told that a number of our staff members do not want to do their personal introductions, so I'm going to introduce them for you. And we're going to start with our committee policy analyst, Jan Stinisbeck, with the Research Division. Mr. Stinisbeck has been with the Research Division since 2014, where he served as the policy analyst for the Assembly Committee on Growth and Infrastructure during the 2023 session and the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources and its Subcommittee on Public Lands during the 21-22 interim, and we're thrilled to have him back. We also have committee counsel by my side, Erin Sturdivant and Jeffrey Chronister with the Legal Division. Ms. Sturdivant has worked for the LCB for 9 years. She staffed the Legislative Committee on Public Lands during the 3 legislative interims and the committees on natural resources during those same 3 legislative sessions. Mr. Chronister recently joined the LCB and is staffing his first interim, and we're thrilled to have him, and I'm thrilled to work with Ms. Sturdivant again, as she was our legal counsel on natural resources this past session in the Senate. And I believe you also served in the Assembly in that same role. Well, we're thrilled to have you. In Carson City, we have committee policy analyst Becky Perrott with the Research Division. Ms. Perrott has been with the LCB since 2022 and served as the policy analyst for the Assembly Committee on Natural Resources during the 2023 session. We also have Committee Secretary Lisa Kramer, also with the Research Division. Ms. Kramer's been with the LCB for 12 years, where she staffed the Legislative Committee for the review and oversight of the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency for 5 interims, and has assisted with the Standing Committee on Natural Resources in both houses. And we're so lucky to have them here with us today. Thank you for joining us. And joining us on Zoom, we have fiscal analyst Adam Drost with the Fiscal Division. Mr. Drost has been with the LCB since 2012 and currently serves as a principal program analyst. In that role, Mr. Drost and his team members review and monitor the budgets for various agencies related to natural resources. And I have to mention, of course, our fantastic broadcast and production services staff who enable us, the presenters, and members of the public to participate in these meetings and ensure that recordings of our meetings are available to everyone. So thank you so much to our broadcast and production staff who are always working so hard behind the scenes. And with that, we're going to move on to number 4, our presentation of the committee brief, and our committee analyst, Jan Stinisbeck, will present the committee brief. Mr. Stinisbeck, please proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, I'm Jan Stinisbeck with the Research Division of the LCB, and it's my pleasure to serve this interim as the main policy analyst assigned to this committee. As non-partisan central staff to the Nevada Legislature, can I advocate for nor against any measure that comes before this body. However, I'm available to assist the committee and its members on any issue or topic on a confidential basis. At the Chair's pleasure, I will provide an overview of the committee brief, which is posted to the committee website. And the committee brief contains a list of members and staff assigned to the committee, as well as the committee's jurisdiction, powers, and duties. It is important to note that the committee may request up to 14 bill draft requests this interim for the 2025 session, of which at least 4 must be based on a recommendation by its Subcommittee on Public Lands. The Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources is budgeted to have up to 6, and the Subcommittee on Public Lands up to 3 meetings this interim. The committee's currently scheduled meetings can be found on its website, and as such, the remaining meetings that are currently scheduled are February 29th, April 5th, May 10th, and August 23rd of this year. This completes my remarks, and I'm standing available for any questions the committee might have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stinisbeck. Do we have any questions from the committee? Do we have any questions in Carson City? Okay. Hearing no questions, we will move on to number 5, the appointment of members to the Subcommittee on Public Lands. As chair of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources, it is my responsibility to appoint the members of the Subcommittee on Public Lands. 4 members must be selected from this Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources, consisting of 2 assembly members and 2 senators. Additionally, the subcommittee has 1 member representing the governing body of a local political subdivision and 1 member representing the tribal governments in Nevada. As such, I'd like to announce my appointments of the following members to serve on the subcommittee this interim. We'll have Chair, Senator Melanie Scheibel, Vice Chair, Assemblywoman Natha Anderson. Our members will be Senator Pete Goycochea and Assemblyman Rich DeLong. Serving as alternates will be Assemblywoman Alexis Hansen and myself. Clark County Commissioner Justin Jones will be our local government representative, and the tribal representative will be appointed at a later date as we're awaiting the recommendation of the Intertribal Council of Nevada. Thank you all very much for your service on this very important subcommittee. And that brings us to item 6. Look at how quickly we're going this morning. Everyone's going to get some of their morning back, I suspect. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation from the National Conference of State Legislatures on natural resources issues around the country. I believe they'll be joining us via Zoom. And we felt this was really important because coming into the interim and looking at the issues that are facing us around the country, we want to be cognizant of everything going on around us as we determine what will be coming before us next legislative session. So with that said, BPS, are we ready to go? Is Ms. Schultz available on Zoom for us?
Yes, she is.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much, BPS. Thank you very much for making sure that Ms. Schultz is set. And Ms. Schultz, we're looking forward to your presentation. You may proceed, and thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Let me go ahead and get this shared. Here we go. And let's see. Great. Okay, good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Jennifer Schultz. Unfortunately, Kim Terrell, the head of our program, isn't feeling well and asked me to step in. So I'll do my best. I've been at NCSL for over 10 years, where I split my time between environmental issues, mainly waste and recycling, land use, some environmental health and disaster resilience, and military and veterans affairs. I am based in our Denver office, but I'm joining you today from Vermont, where I moved a few months ago. Just a bit about NCSL, if you're not familiar. We are a bipartisan organization serving state legislators and legislative staff for almost 50 years. We promote policy innovation, create opportunities for lawmakers to share knowledge, and ensure state legislatures have a strong, cohesive voice in the federal system. So turning now to hot topics in Environment and Natural Resources. I'll start with our database. Last year, we combined 2 legislation databases, one on environment and natural resources and one on environmental health, to better help our members find everything they're looking for in one place. And in 2023, our team captured almost 1,800 bills across 28 topic areas, and things are well underway this year with over 970 bills tracked just this month. Our team covers a range of topics related to environmental policy. At a high level, they fall into the following buckets: water, natural resources, natural disasters, land use, environmental health, and waste and recycling. As you can see on this slide, some of those topics that fall under each of the buckets are listed. Diving a bit deeper into each of these issue areas, you see that water policy, as you're all keenly aware, is both broad and complex. Legislation can generally be sorted into the categories of governance and management, infrastructure, and quality issues. As drought conditions have worsened, particularly in the West, we've seen states digging deep into their own statutes to see what's on the books as they try to keep water supplies from drying up. This means looking at jurisdictional issues, water reuse and conservation, water rights and appropriations. Flooding, on the other hand, requires preparation and assessment of infrastructure capacity. States must also assess the balance required to maintain local ecosystems, support agricultural demand, and recreation. Water infrastructure issues, often assessing the viability of dams and reservoirs, balancing the need to upgrade infrastructure and expand to accommodate growth, and evaluating the most efficient paths forward for small and rural systems, with consolidation often a consideration. Policy on water quality largely focuses on drinking water standards and enforcement, often empowering regulatory authorities and local utilities to set standards and ensure availability of funding for surveillance and remediation. Recent sessions have included state action on lead pipe replacement, the role of authorities in private well management, and how best to achieve equitable outcomes. Disaster resilience. Given the increase in the size and frequency of disasters, policy at the state and federal level has shifted from preparedness and response to mitigation, trying to reduce the risks and impacts of disasters before they happen. In response to the diversification of federal funding, at least 28 states and DC have created some sort of resilience body. This could be a designated office, resilience officer, or task force. States have noted that this approach helps streamline collaboration among agencies and jurisdictions and complements FEMA's ethos of locally executed, state-managed, federally supported. States are also reevaluating the tools that they have, including building codes and land use policies. A trend we're keeping an eye on is the use of buyouts as a way to move people away from areas that are prone to repeated and or worsening disaster threats. States are also getting creative with how they pay for disasters by creating revolving loan funds, infrastructure banks, and catastrophe bonds, which offer an option to bolster insurance needs in the wake of extreme events. Parametric insurance offers a way to disperse funds quickly, since payouts are triggered by condition predictions. I'll also call your attention to a recent FEMA announcement regarding several changes in their individual assistance programs, which will make it easier for disaster victims to get resources quickly and bridge the gap in covering losses in excess of what's covered by individual homeowners insurance. Moving on to land use, here are some land use related issues that have gained traction at the state level. One is wildlife corridors. 12 states have enacted legislation or issued executive orders in recent years to identify and protect wildlife corridors, and contributing to over 1,000 wildlife crossings in the US today. Recreation, 18 states have created state offices of outdoor recreation. These offices provide a single point of contact for business and government and can support economic development initiatives, workforce programs, youth engagement, and more. States are also making investments in outdoor recreation through bonds, general appropriations, lottery proceeds, vehicle registration fees, oil and gas royalties, taxes on temporary lodgings, and real estate transfers. Mining, states are also interested in, many states are interested in research and development to support a domestic supply of critical minerals. At least a dozen states introduced legislation last year. And finally, foreign ownership of land. Foreign owners hold more than 40 million acres of US farmland, a trend that has many legislators raising concerns about the impact on the food supply and national security. 35 states considered legislation to restrict foreign ownership in 2023, with 15 enactments. And this year, we are tracking bills in 16 states already. NCSL's environmental health coverage tracks many areas, but there has been outsized focus recently in air quality, PFAS, pesticides, and lead. On air quality, wildfire smoke has dominated discussions in state legislatures the past few years. This is of particular interest to states who may be out of attainment with the NAAQS and AQS. The EPA continues to look at these exceptional events and develop tools to help states. On PFAS, PFAS describes a class of thousands of synthetic chemicals that have valuable industrial uses and have been used widely since the 40s. Anything that is water, grease, stain, heat, or fire resistant may very well contain PFAS. Their durability makes them useful but difficult to manage or remove from the environment. States are taking action in various ways, like source reduction, establishing drinking water maximum contaminant levels, and exploring remediation. The EPA proposed drinking water maximum contaminant levels are lower than any state currently imposes. The EPA has yet to release a final rulemaking. There's also widespread interest in intervention and cleanup technologies, so this is very much an emerging space. On pesticides, recent state action most often addresses a few key areas: the use or restriction of neonicotinoid products based on human and pollinator impacts, provisions for pesticide applications such as accounting for wind and timing near schools, and preemption. Some states have supported local pesticide regulations, while others have reinforced state-level authority. And on lead, states considered more than 100 bills last year with 25 enactments. Delaware will create a process for health officials to identify and remediate homes that contain exposed lead paint, including screening every property where a child received a test result showing an elevated blood lead level. Michigan passed a package of bills that require schools and childcare centers to install filtered faucets and conduct routine sampling. And our last example, Rhode Island also passed multiple bills related to lead service line replacement, protections for renters, and damages for families affected by childhood lead poisoning. On to waste and recycling. This is something we are also tracking. The NCSL Public-Private Partnership on Recycling just wrapped up this fall, which I staffed. And we released a recycling policy toolkit that's linked here. The toolkit includes a recycling 101 as well as in-depth reports on extended producer responsibility and recycling market development. We also cover source reduction measures around single-use plastics and polystyrene, as well as bottle bills, food waste, recycled content mandates, chemical recycling, etc. A few other areas that are gaining traction in the natural resources space and bear mention include regenerative solutions, electric vehicle life cycles, and carbon capture. Regenerative solutions often refer to agricultural practices to improve yield and resilience to changing conditions. Many states encourage partnerships between producers and university extension programs to explore options to bolster soil health through practices like cover crops, no-till methods, and more diversified crop rotation. Electric vehicles, as the popularity of them continues to grow, there is increasing demands for rare earth elements such as lithium. As with any natural resource extraction, states are looking to balance economic opportunities and environmental impacts. A handful of states are also looking at solutions for battery reuse and recycling. Carbon capture, or CCS, is one option states are exploring to offset emissions. In 2023, 30 states introduced 142 bills regarding CCS. Arkansas and Oklahoma both enacted legislation defining bioenergy paired with carbon capture and storage as a carbon negative energy source. Indiana enacted Senate Bill 541 to establish a carbon sequestration pilot project with 2 carbon dioxide pipelines at a proposed ammonia production facility. States also consider legislation concerning soil-based carbon sequestration. For example, Maine enacted a bill requiring a study and report on incentive programs for soil carbon sequestration. The study is to be conducted on forest lands, agricultural lands, conservation lands, and wetlands, as well as in suburban and urban areas. And here are links to some new resources that we've put out in the past month or two. The Disaster Resilience Report, a Disaster Resilience Toolkit that aggregates resilience resources from NCSL across numerous program areas. We have a web page on soil health. We updated one on lead service lines, wetlands, PFAS, constantly tracking, and we have some resources on chief resilience officers, along with the recycling policy toolkit, and many, many other resources that we'd be happy to share with this committee as you encounter any questions. So that is all that I have today. I know that was a lot. And me filling in for Kim. So I'm happy to take any questions or refer to my colleagues if necessary.
Thank you so much, Ms. Schultz. That was really interesting. And you're right, it was a lot of information packed into a small time period, which we really appreciate. Do we have any questions from the committee, either here in Las Vegas or in Carson City? Assemblywoman Bilbray-Axelrod.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. I did want to ask something about the PFAS. We had some legislation last session that unfortunately was vetoed, but I believe it was vetoed. Yes, it was vetoed. Sometimes you doubt yourself after 4 terms. But I was just wondering what other states have brought that. Has it been bipartisan? Just anything that you could sort of drill down on what has been successful.
Yes, so I personally do not cover PFAS, but my fantastic colleague, Emily
Can you please state
Sampson-
your name one more time for the record? I'm sorry, and thank you. If you could just
yes,
share your name
this
one
is-
more time.
Yep, this is Jennifer Schultz, National Conference of State Legislatures. I was saying that I personally do not cover PFAS, but my fantastic colleague, Emily Sampson, does, and she has complete legislation charts of every bill that was introduced. There are many, and an updated webpage, and I'd be happy to connect with you offline and share those resources.
Thank you so much. And could you share that with the entire committee?
Jennifer Schultz again. Yes, I can.
Thank you so much. And great question. Do we have any other questions? We have Senator Gokachia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I would be a little bit interested in the 35 states that are looking at foreign land ownership and just how far those bills, do you have kind of a breakdown of that you could get to us on the committee, what states they are, and just kind of a nutshell of what they're really looking at? I know in some areas it's critical, and then I think it clearly ties back into the critical minerals, which we have in this state, the huge lithium deposit in northern Nevada, and just how that's, technically behind the scenes, they're saying that's probably foreign money that's actually developing the project. So how do they deal with that? Thank you. If you just a little more along those lines, I think would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes, Jennifer Schultz, thank you for the question. That is a topic that I cover, and I'd be happy to share, again, complete legislation chart with this committee. Like I said, 35 states introduced legislation last year, that more than 100 bills, 15 were enacted across the country, various regions, and this just in January, we are tracking bills in 16 states, which I also have to share.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you sharing this with the entire committee. These are great questions. We do have a question from Carson City as well. Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this presentation today. So I appreciated that there was a whole slide on water because I think that's one of the most critical issues that we are facing in our state. I would be very interested to learn what other states, especially in the West, are doing about water rights and drought and balancing over appropriation and over pumping and all these challenges that we're seeing with climate change and water rights today.
Thank you. I jotted down that, and I will get together with my colleagues and add this to the package we'll be sharing with the committee.
Thank you so much, Ms. Schultz. Do we have any other questions in Carson City? Okay, I don't see any. I'm going to give you a moment to just jump in because it is harder to tell over the smaller, probably my old eyes, over the smaller broadcast here. I'm not seeing anyone jumping in, so Ms. Schultz, thank you so much. We really, really appreciated your presentation. Please thank Ms. Terrell for us as well. We hope she feels better, and we look forward to receiving some of those answers and wish you a wonderful rest of your Monday. With that, we are going to move into item 7 on our agenda, the presentation on research addressing climate change issues. And with that, we are going to welcome up our friends from the Desert Research Institute. We have Dr. Acharya, I believe, and Ms. Tracy Bauer. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Kumud Acharya, K-U-M-U-D-A-C-H-A-R-Y-A, President of DRI. It's our honor to be here. I'm here with Tracy Bauer. I'll let Tracy introduce later on. We're going to tag team on this presentation. Thank you again for inviting us. Next slide. So just wanted to make sure that we always put this slide here. We're one of 8 NC institutions. We're the only research institute exclusively involved in research, and we don't grant degrees, but we're part of the system here. So we've grown a little bit in the last few years. Now we've been around for 60 plus years. We have more than 600 scientists, students, and staff at DRI, 140 PhDs researching on more than 40 disciplines. And last year, we brought $47 million in external grants and contracts, not counting the state support. And so what do? DRI, we investigate a human's impact on the environment and environment's impact on the human. We research on air, water, earth and fire, and how that impacts humans. So I want to share with you a few research highlights that might be of interest to you that DRI scientists are currently involved in. The first one is the private drinking water wells. One of our teams at DRI Northern Campus Reno, led by Dr. Monica Arienjo, they sampled 170 groundwater wells in northern Nevada. They found out that almost 1/3 of those wells have elevated concentration of arsenic, higher than EPA standards. And our scientists are trying to educate those homeowners on how they might want to treat those their drinking water system from the water that they get from the wells. And this is a very critical study. They also found some other contaminants, but arsenic was the main one. So many of you are familiar, DRI houses one of the 6 national regional climate centers, primarily funded by NOAA. DRI is responsible for collecting climate data for 11 Western United States here, and then this data is available for policymakers and all water managers and all kinds of people, and also public. So a couple of projects out of Western Regional Climate Center. DRI scientists are deeply involved in studying atmospheric rivers. Obviously, atmospheric rivers have become a fairly common phenomena recently that bring those rivers, those events bring huge amount of precipitation. And our scientists are also involved in producing that, on the right-hand side, you see that map, drought monitor. That is the drought conditions for the whole country. This map is produced every week, and this is basically tells which part of the country is under drought right now. So give you an example of, you remember recently Hurricane Hillary flooded Kyle Canyon here in southern Nevada, and DRI scientists were involved working with Clark County people and looking at the impact of the flood on the debris flow and damages. I remember that there were so many people who were stranded there, and we were involved in trying to help the county manage those situations. I want to share with you another new project here. This is called ArcStorm. ArcStorm 2 is 10 years ago, United States Geological Survey produced a scenario that basically mimics what happens if there is a historical level of floods. Which is like the flood that happens every 200 to 300 years. The last flood of similar magnitude happened in 1861, and that damaged a lot of watersheds and flooded huge amount of areas in California and Nevada. So our scientists are working on here to see what happens if we get one of those events, historical events. And so they are basically working with the emergency responders and all of those to basically come up with some sort of preparedness, right? I mean, what happens if you get a massive series of our atmospheric rivers, and how that would impact, and how should we be preparing for that kind of events in Nevada? So this is an ongoing project, and happy to share with you more as we make more progress. What number are we on right now? You want to take that one? Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Tracy Bauer for the record, TRACYBOWER, also with Desert Research Institute. Building on what President Acharya said, I want to talk a little bit about some of the impacts of extreme heat. Nevada holds the distinction of having 2 of the fastest warming cities in the country, both Reno and Las Vegas, are listed as among the fastest warming cities. And we know that summers are getting hotter, days are getting more difficult, especially for vulnerable populations. And one of the things that our scientists have realized is that there's not a single agency that owns the response to heat. It often at times rests with a number of different agencies to respond to people who are impacted by extreme heat. And so DRI scientists have put together the Southern Nevada Heat Resilience Lab. It is designed to bring together the different groups that are responsible for responding to vulnerable populations and the impacts that heat is creating to find solutions that will work for the Southern Nevada community. So we're excited to bring those groups together. It's a new project, but we're hopeful that it will really help to kind of build build a better Southern Nevada response to dealing with extreme heat.
So another project is geoengineering. Geoengineering is there, so this is a new research. DRI received funding from federal government to see if we can manipulate climate at a local scale. So for example, maybe can we change the color of buildings so that there is more reflectivity and less heat absorbance? Or is there a way to thin cirrus clouds so that we are basically not capturing that excess heat? So this is a geoengineering to deal with the impact of climate change. And DRI also has a program within Western Regional Climate Center where we're working on developing wildfire predictive models. Once the fire starts, like where will that fire move, depending on the weather and climate conditions. So one of the other projects I think that Senator Pete Goycochea would appreciate, he's been involved with working on DRI, and this one is the Nevada Water Resources Initiative. This is a project that began about a year ago where we're mapping, basically assessing water resources of the entire state, the groundwater basins, the amount of water that we're losing to the atmosphere, amount of surface water, and this will allow us, this is a 4-year project, this will basically tell us whether or not we're using our water resources sustainably. And then I think Senator Pagina has heard this many times from us. Open ET is another program DRI has developed working with the USGS, Environmental Defense Fund, and others, basically allowing water managers or the farmers to basically understand how much water they are losing from their ag fields every day just using an app and satellite data. And cloud seeding, again, I have to thank, would like to thank Senator Goycochea for his support and leading the effort and getting us additional funding for cloud seeding. This is our historical program, long-running program. Basically, the generators that are placed in like 24 locations to increase precipitation in the state and neighboring states. DRI also has quite a lot of archaeologists working with anthropologists to try to understand how the culture and natural resources impacted their decision makings, right? So the anthropologists study present-day humans, but the archaeologists study the materials left by the past humans and how their behavior changed depending on environmental conditions. And DRI is very proud to say that 50% of our energy comes from solar on both campuses, but we're also deeply involved in researching how to increase efficiency of solar systems. Microplastics is a new project. We heard about PFAS earlier. Microplastics and other emerging contaminants. We're finding microplastics in all kinds of places. They come from our clothes and all kinds of things that we use in daily practices, and DRI is a leader in the research of microplastics and prevention of its source. And then another project is DRI scientists are also working in air quality of national parks all over the country. So we have, our scientists have developed what they call it a haze index. If there is a national park, their air quality is poor, they try to understand the source of that air quality and work with National Park Service and other agencies to manage those source control. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair, again, Tracy Bauer for the record. One of the other ways that DRI is contributing, not just to the state, but to the country as a whole, is through our Integrated Terrain Analysis Program. And this is a program that really looks at sort of the environment's impacts on the military's ability to respond in different conditions. So everything from how a tank or a weapon or even an IED might respond differently depending on what part of the world the military is working in. This is a long-running program that's funded through the Department of Defense, but again really looks at the impact that the environment has on the military's ability to respond. We also have a long-running program that deals with a number of environmental issues at the Nevada National Security Site, what used to be the Nevada Test Site. We have more than 40 years of history out at the NNSS doing engineering and hydrologic science support, national security program support, environmental monitoring. We also have a really widespread community environmental monitoring program. We have weather stations that are set up throughout southern Nevada, southern Utah, and parts of California. California. We work with a community volunteer, usually it's a science teacher or retired teacher in that community, to measure the environmental impacts of anything coming off of the Nevada National Security Site. So should there be any sort of a release or even a wildfire, the people in those communities will know if it's having any impact on their local community. We also do a lot of cultural resource management for the Nevada National Security Site, and then in a newer program, we're working on some defense nuclear nonproliferation out at the NNSS as well. I want to talk a little bit too about STEM education and the impact that DRI scientists have on STEM education throughout the state. Although we are not a degree granting institution within the NG system, our scientists have worked really hard to translate the science that they do into programs that we can incorporate into Nevada schools. Our STEM education team provides a lending library of resources for Nevada teachers. Those are made available free of charge. So, for example, if you're a third grade teacher and you want to teach about the water cycle, you can check out a STEM education kit that does that. If you're a teacher that needs some assistance teaching robotics, we have lending libraries, and then we also have teacher training classes that we offer to Nevada educators, again at no charge, to help them to feel more confident teaching STEM, including robotics, throughout the state. This is a program that's been funded primarily through philanthropic support. We have had some support through some federal earmarks as well to help build out this program, but we think it's a really important way that our scientists can contribute to STEM education throughout the state. And I want to just remind everyone too, those are tools that are available to any teacher, so it doesn't matter if you're in an urban school or rural school, public, private, charter school, we make those available to any educator throughout the state. In addition to that program, again, we're not a degree granting institution, but we like to talk a lot about the grad students and the undergrad interns who work alongside our scientists. So if you're a student at UNLV or UNR, DRI can help to fund some of those students' education, and they work alongside our scientists in the laboratory as well as in the field. We have an undergraduate internship immersion program that is really targeted towards getting students who don't see themselves as STEM majors to maybe consider a career in science. So we have students from Nevada State University, CSN, Truckee Meadows Community College, who come on board at DRI for a 16-week paid internship program, again, with the goal of getting them to maybe expand what career fields they would consider going into. So we're really excited to have, again, a strong impact on STEM education, even though we're not the one granting that student's degree. We also do a lot of community outreach to share the science that is happening at both our Reno and Las Vegas campuses through our science lecture series that we do in both parts of the state. And then we also open our campuses up for open house events as well. So we're really excited to share the work that our scientists are conducting with the community. One ranking that I'd like to share is through the National Science Foundation. When you look at the amount of funding that the National Science Foundation awards to research institutions, DRI ranks in the top 9% for geosciences overall. We rank in the top 6% when you look specifically at atmospheric science, and then the top 3% for geologic and earth sciences. So we are really among the nation's leaders when it comes to environmental research. And again, those are about 600 scientists who are based here in Nevada, who do work here in Nevada and all over the world. We also like to tout that we get about 15% or so of our funding from the state. That generally funds our labs, our operations and maintenance of our equipment, and the admin side of DRI. Everything else, our scientists earn their own salaries based on the grants and contracts that they earn. So we feel like we're also a positive environmental impact to the state. For every dollar that we get in state funding, our scientists bring in almost $5 in outside grant and contract revenue. And when you look at the direct, indirect, and induced combined ROI, it's over $8 for every dollar that we get from the state. We heard some great news this morning along those lines as well. The National Science Foundation launched a new program called NSF Engines, which is looking at how do you create positive economic impact through scientific research. DRI and UNLV, along with a couple of other partners, were named today as one of those NSF Engine awardees. It is about up to $160 million to our partners and DRI over the next 10 years. That's the cap on that award. That doesn't mean we'll get that much, but we're really excited. It's one of 10 NSF Engine awards that were announced today by the White House. So again, we like to tout that we do great work and that we have a really positive impact on the state's economy as well. And that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Acharya and Ms. Bauer. I am always fascinated by the work that DRI does. I enjoyed hearing your presentation during the last legislative session. I enjoyed hearing everything today as well. And I know that due to time constraints, there was a lot of information packed into a little bit of time. So we do have a few committee questions, and we'll start in Carson City with Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this presentation. I love hearing about all the different things, and wow. I have multiple questions, but at this time I'll just ask two. Don't giggle about that, Assemblymember DeLong, you're used to it. I don't have the number, but you talked about at one point about the heat mechanisms and the fact that we have the two of the cities that are growing hottest, I guess, for lack of a better term. And you spoke of community outreach. It's the goals. It's under the Southern Nevada Heat Resilience Lab slide. You spoke of develop meaningful community engagement. What is the thought of that, and what is the outreach in there? Because as I look around, this is a very pale group of people here. And so I was just wondering, what is that meaningful community engagement and outreach that is planned at this time?
Madam Chair, through you to Assemblywoman Anderson, that is definitely...
Thank you. You can go direct. Do repeat your name for the record, and thank you.
Tracy Bauer for the record with DRI. That is definitely one of the things that the group working for the Southern Nevada Heat Resilience Lab is very mindful of. And so the people that they've brought to the table for those initial conversations, some of which have really focused on what are the challenges associated with responding to heat. For example, it might be somebody who works in a really hot environment, whether that's indoors or outdoors, right? Somebody who works outdoors all day long, or somebody who works in a really hot indoor kitchen, but then goes home and perhaps can't afford to run their air conditioning at night. So they're bringing together people who are in those vulnerable populations to really identify what the challenges are with living with extreme heat. And then from there, we'll work with the partners who are responsible for responding to extreme heat to see if they can identify some of those solutions. So it's really starting at the community level with the people who are the most impacted. And that's an important part of this project, and really kind of where they are right now in those very early stages, trying to focus on what are the things that are driving people to be impacted by extreme heat.
Thank you. Follow-up, if I may?
Yes, one follow-up.
Thank you. So with that, are you maybe working with some of those, because I really appreciate you bringing up the very specific employees and the world that they are in, because I know that we've had numerous discussions over the last two sessions, as well as some bills, that had to do with working in that heat. If you're a construction worker, let's say, and it is 106 degrees out and you're supposed to continue to work, are you reaching out with some of the unions and or associations which might represent these individuals, or is it more being done through an individual basis? And I recognize that this is a very early stage, but it's just something to put out there.
Again, Tracy Bauer for the record. I don't know if that outreach has originated through the unions, but again, I know that they've been targeting people who live in communities that tend to have higher incidence of issues with the extreme heat, underserved populations and neighborhoods that have been impacted. But I'd be happy to follow up and get more information on exactly kind of how they've been able to identify those individuals to participate in this, and we would be happy to follow up with that information.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. We are going to go next to Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, and then we're going to come back to Vegas with Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod, and then if anyone else has questions, we'll follow up after that.
Thank you, Chair. I have kind of a request. I'm not sure that you can answer it right now, and then I have my question. So I appreciate talking about heat resiliency and climate resiliency. I know that we just had the National Climate Assessment, and it came out and said that Nevada has done some of the least work in the Southwest on climate resiliency, and our cities have done some of the least work compared to other cities on climate resiliency. And so I would just really like to have some policy recommendations as you're doing this investigation to how we can promote more action on climate resiliency, not just heat resiliency, but in general climate resiliency. So that's my request. And then I have a question. Would you like to pause and respond, or do you want me to go to my next question?
Thank you, Kumud Acharya, President of DRI, for the record. I think that's a great question. One thing is we obviously don't make policies, but we're happy to provide our data to policymakers, then they can make policies on it. So DRI is a non-policy making body, and we're a bipartisan research institution. So, but I agree with you that there's a lot that we need to work on. And so just wanted to put that out there so that you understood that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm not saying you need to bring us a bill, for sure. I just am looking forward to the results of your study so that we can work on policy. So my actual question, though, is about microplastics. If you could speak a little bit more to what you've seen on what has led to microplastics. I know that we have alarming levels in Lake Tahoe up near us. And so anything you can share more on the causes and what's happening up in those areas.
Thank you, Kumud Acharya, again for the record. Happy to speak to that. Microplastics, we found that, our scientists have found that one of the biggest sources of microplastics are the dryer vents in people's homes, So a lot of those microplastics, they can originate from the clothes that we wear, particularly fleece. And also the cosmetics, all the detergents, all those things that we regularly use. And so there are all kinds of plastics out there, right? These are smaller fragments of macroplastics and some other ones that you can't even see it with your naked eyes. So they have found that we basically emit those plastics from places that we have never thought of before. So one of the biggest findings that came out of this research. And then now we're trying to see if we can develop some sort of a filter that can be maybe mounted on those dryer vents that can basically prevent those plastics from getting into the outside or water bodies. So microplastics are all over the place. The sources can be from unpredictable places and areas. So it's a much bigger challenge that we had initially thought. So it's a growing research at DRI right now. We have a number of people collecting data. They're finding microplastics in Lake Tahoe, Lake Mead. They're finding in like Alps, the snows, and everywhere. So I think that there's no regulation right now to control that, but it's similar to PFAS, though, right? I mean, it's something that's persistent in our system. So we just have to understand and identify those sources and see if we can treat them at the source. Hopefully that answered a little bit of your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. It's just incredible the work that DRI does, and I'm just always blown away. And just even that last bit with the dryer, having that come through the vent, and that's just fascinating. My question, I'm kind of putting on my different hat as chairing the Education Committee. I love the green boxes. I love the STEM education. I was wondering, two questions. What age does that start? What age does it end? Do you have pre-K boxes? Does it go up through high school? And then you mentioned that they're available throughout the state. So would a teacher reach out to you and ask for you to send that? Is that how it would go? And you said there's no charge, but would they have to pay for it to be sent back?
Kumar Acharya, for the record, I think either of us can answer that question. It is available for K through 12, entire from elementary school to high school. The teachers can go to our website. There's a listing of all our green boxes. There are, I believe, 150 of them in circulation in 40 different topics. They can request, put their request, and I just had an experience because my wife is a school teacher, and she wanted to use one of those boxes, and I said, why don't you go to a website and get it? And so she went to a website, and she ordered a box that was shipped to her school. She teaches at Legacy Traditional at Cadence, and then it was right there, in a few weeks, and she gets to keep it for 4 to 6 weeks, and then when the box is shipped to her, DRI also sends the shipping back label, and it's free for the teachers to send that boxes back to DRI. Everything is absolutely free. All they have to do is to go online and request those boxes.
Thank you so much. It really is a wonderful resource for the students in our state. We have some more questions up north, and we will go to Assemblyman DeLong and then Assemblyman Gurr.
Thank you, Chair. Really appreciate the presentation. I had a question about the fire research. Are you looking at the effectiveness of rangeland and forest management on wildfire propagation?
Again, Tracy Bauer for the record. Assemblyman, that is something that is, I think, an important part of research into wildfire. I know that that's an area that our scientists have been eager to find additional funding for. And I can't tell you the scope of all of the research that they've done in that particular area, but I know that in the last couple of years, we've been looking at funding opportunities to be able to better understand it, knowing that that is a big part of the wildfire risk and wildfire management. I'd be happy to follow up too with the researcher who's leading in that area just to see if there's anything specific within the state that we can provide.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assemblyman Gurr?
Thank you, Chair. Like everybody else has said, what a great presentation. Being my freshman year, I've not seen it before, but cloud seeding brings up it looks like it was really successful last winter, but over time, how's it been? And I was under the impression that it had been suspended for a while. Is it in place and working, and where, and how much success have you had?
Madam Chair, for the record, Tracy Bauer with DRI. DRI has had a successful cloud seeding program for decades. It was a program that the state funded for a very long time until roughly the Great Recession, and then funding was cut during budget cuts to the state. It was reinstated, I think, for 1 year in 2019, and then funding was last reinstated in the 2023 legislative session. Thanks to Senator Goa-Kachia's leadership for sponsoring that bill, we received $600,000 a year for each year of the biennium. We have about 24 or so cloud seeding generators that are located throughout the state that we can operate when weather conditions are right. So we can't make rain out of nothing on a perfectly clear day, but when those winter storm conditions are right, then our scientists can fire up those cloud seeding generators and generate about 10 to 15% more precipitation depending upon the winter storm. And so they have been operating those over the winter, and I know that we have a report that we'll provide to the legislature at the end of the fiscal year on how often those were operated, and they can estimate what they've been able to generate in terms of additional precipitation. In the years when the state funding was not available, we continued to operate the program, but on a much smaller budget. So we went around to smaller water agencies throughout the state. We had some philanthropic funding that was made available as well. So we still operated it. But in those conditions, we were not as effective because we oftentimes wouldn't get funding until conditions were so dire that somebody would provide some funding. So having the state funding is really important for us to be able to operate that program more effectively and generate more precipitation for the state. So again, we're very grateful for Senator Goa-Kachia's sponsorship of the bill and the funding that provided. and that we're hopeful that that will be able to continue in the next legislative session as well, because we do think it's an important tool to have in the state's water portfolio.
Thank you.
Senator Gokachia is obviously very, very familiar with the wonderful work done by DRI, so he doesn't have any questions at this time. I would love to ask where the open evapotranspiration program is right now. I am curious because, again, I have heard a lot about it, and I think it's really important to the future of the state. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Tracy Bauer for the record. So OpenET was developed in partnership with the Environmental Defense Fund, Google, and NASA. There are two bills, one sponsored by Senator Cortez Masto and one sponsored by Congresswoman Lee, that would create some additional funding within USGS for OpenET. Those bills have not passed yet, but we're continuing to look at ways that, again, we can make that tool available to agricultural users to be able to better understand what's happening with their crops. So they still have some funding that they have from a previous appropriation at the federal level, but that permanent funding source through USGS has not happened yet.
Thank you so much. And one final, not so much question as I'm hoping you can share, one of the really fascinating projects that I kind of geeked out over during session, but I believe it was in Greenland with a cylindrical tube of ice. If you can share that with the committee, because I find it so fascinating and it really fits in with the archaeology portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Kamut Acharya for the record. Yes, our ice core program is going really, really well. So 2 years ago, our team went there to Greenland to bring ice cores. And last summer, actually 23 summer, after the legislative session ended, our team took the lab to Greenland. They took all the equipments to Greenland and they were there for a couple of months tasting. So that program is going really strong, and basically they are looking at 10,000 years of climate history, how the atmospheric depositions that have been deposited on those ice cores are telling us during what period we were emitting and what caused that. For example, when we started using gasolines, the lead spiked in our ear, and all of those. They've even discovered that the large volcanoes in the past have actually led to massive famine because of cooling effect, and that led to fall of Roman Empire and all of that. That team is doing really well and collecting a lot of data, and please be on the lookout. Happy to share with you the more research that comes out, And so it's going very strong. And so they actually took the whole lab to Greenland in 23 summer.
Thank you so much. I'm sure I'll be reaching back out for updates on that program. Do we have any other questions from the committee here in Vegas or in Carson City? Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. We really, really enjoyed it. And can the secretary please mark Senator Scheibel present?
Thank you.
All right. That will lead us to our next presentation on wildfire issues. Agenda item 8. We have a presentation from Nevada's Division of Forestry to discuss wildfire issues in the state. State Forester Fire Warden KC, thank you for joining us today from Carson City, and we'd love for you to begin when you're ready. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Casey Casey, State Forester Fire Warden for the record. That's K-A-C-E-Y, first name, last name K-C. With me, I have my Deputy Administrators, Ryan Shane and Eric Antle, and we are going to provide you a presentation on a couple of the programs the division is fortunate to be able to operate. So just as an overview and reminder that the division's mission is to protect and enhance Nevada's ecosystems and communities through natural resource stewardship and wildfire management. We do this through implementation of multiple programs, as all listed here. I'm not going to list them all, some of which are statutorily required, the protection of endangered and protected flora, some of which, making sure that we have a wildfire management program, insect and disease prevention, urban and community forestry, others which are not required by our statutes but are allowed, and our federally operated programs. We did have quite a large number of accomplishments this year, and some of which I will speak to directly in slides going forward. But a big takeaway of what happened this year, we did a lot of education and outreach, a lot more than we had in historic years. We did treat a lot of acres. I normally would have started with the discussion on our shared stewardship program, but you're going to hear from that committee later, so I skipped over all the acres we treated. We did sell a lot of plant materials, and we were able to hit the urban and community forestry program pretty hard this year with a lot of outreach and education. So, a recap of the fire season. You might say, what fire season this year? Don't get used to it. 2023 was, I want to say, a little bit predicted that we were going to have a slow season. We could not have predicted that it was going to be the lowest in recorded history in Nevada. But it was at 1,300 acres burned across the state. I would love to take all the credit for why those acres didn't burn, but I want to say it was mostly weather driven. Snow at all elevations had compacted the annual grass growth at the lower elevations. The snow stuck around higher at the higher elevations, thus reducing the risk. We also had a lot more moisture in the summer storms, which actually created the less impact when we had lightning. We didn't have a lot of dry lightning starts. We did have a less than average number of starts, about 400 fire starts. We usually average about 500 to 600. But what this meant is we had a lot more staff here, both at the local jurisdiction level, the federal and state level. So we actually were able to aggressively attack those fires immediately and put them out. That is not the case when we have multiple states burning across the U.S., So that was also one of the reasons. And then, of course, all of the extra acres we've treated, causing some of those fires to start and remain small, giving our firefighters a better chance to fight them before they got out of control. Like I said, I would have started with our shared stewardship accomplishments, but I'm not going to go there. The Wildland Fire Protection Program is a program that we operate. It's a voluntary program that counties can opt into. One of our highlights this year is we are at near full participation statewide. We did get Mount Charleston in. They have not been in since the program began, so this is a big win for us. Mount Charleston is coming in. We're working on the contract. 31 of the 33 entities are in. One did opt out this year, the city of North Las Vegas, I believe, and that's because they just don't really have a lot of fire risk, so it made sense that they would not want. The primary purpose of the program is for payment of fire bills beyond the initial attack period, but bigger than that, it's risk reduction. We're trying to look at these areas and how are we going to aggressively attack the risk in those areas, both in the built environment and the planted environment. And Fire Adapted Nevada, it's a program that we house in the Division of Forestry, but it is an interagency program with federal, state partnerships, local government entities, all of our partners, the university with Living with Fire. And so we house the coordinator. The big story here was we went from 33 Firewise communities in the state of Nevada in 2022 to 52 as of today and growing. That was a big jump. The year previously, we had 2 in the state of Nevada historically. So we have grown this tremendously. And why does it matter if we grow this? It matters because this means we are educating communities on their risk. They are taking ownership of the built environment and the planted environment. And they're also understanding who do they need to call and how do they work together with our federal, state, local government contract partnerships to actually reduce the risk in a larger scale. So that is a big win this year. I was sure you guys would want to hear an update on the evolution of our conservation camp program. As you know, with the passage of AB 236 in 2019, there was a big reduction in the inmate population that was going into the conservation camps, and we were then putting on fire and fuels crews. We went from about 1,500 in the program rotating through to 300 as of today. We've averaged about 300 over the last couple of years. So this meant we needed to greatly reduce the number of crew supervisors we had, close some of the camps down, and start pivoting to funded, or staffed, I don't know how you would call them, fire and fuels crews. So we started to do that in the last couple sessions. I'm really excited to tell you all today. We took, in the last session, we were given the opportunity to take 35 of our crew supervisor positions who no longer had crews to supervise and make those into 42 firefighter 1s and 2 positions. We were hiring those here in Carson City, actually Washoe Valley at Bowers. We were hiring in Carlin, Ely, and Winnemucca to start testing where we might be able to fill these crews. I'm happy to report in every one of those areas we've been able to hire staff. 25 of the 42 full-time positions are full as of today. We continue to interview. We appreciate the governor's reduction of qualifications. It doesn't mean we want unqualified firefighters out there. It means we train them anyway, so we'll take anyone who wants to work hard and work in fire and fuels, and we will train them. So we're very excited. The only crew that is almost near full, we need one more person to put on it, is the one here at Bowers. The reason for that is we started with seasonal crew. We started 4 years ago filling seasonals here, 20 seasonals. So those seasonals got that time and experience on and then moved into full-time positions. So we are looking at how we might entertain that elsewhere, but we're very excited that we've had such a high turnout in applicants and actually are getting some very, very qualified applicants applying. So as of today, the current camps that stand closed are Ely, Humboldt, Wells, and Tonopah. We remain in the other camps running inmates, and technically we are still running 10 as of last week. I don't know what the numbers are today. Inmates out of Ely Max as well. So as we start to build the transition to the full-time crews, we will likely lose those inmates in Ely, but we will gain the workforce of these fire and fuels crews. This Bowers Fire and Fuels crew, just to give you an example, we had a feeling that this would be a lot more productive crew. We have seen it in the private sector. We are able to send them other places this year because we had less fire danger. They need to reach a certain level of qualification in the nationally certified wildfire world. So we were able to send them out of state, which we are not able to do with our inmate fire crews. Other than California, they went to Montana, Utah, Idaho, I don't know, they went all over this year, and they were able to get many qualifications that luckily a slow fire season offered us. So that was exciting, and exciting for those crews. They got to see fire in many different landscapes. That only helps them to be better firefighters here within the state. So we continue to evolve in the camp program, and we are continuing to run crews in the camps where we still remain with crews in that camp. One of the big highlights of this year, as we went last year, we got NRS 528 adopted, the Urban and Community Forestry Program. We have run this program for quite some time within the Division of Forestry. We knew that we needed to address heat island issues. We knew that we couldn't just focus on our forests and rangelands outside. We needed to look internal to cities and make sure that we were focusing there. Historically, this has been a federally funded program that has been zeroed out in almost every president's budget at the federal level since I started working here 21 years ago. With the infrastructure money, or infrastructure bill, came a large amount of funding into the Urban and Community Forestry Program. They did recognize the need to make sure that we were looking at these underserved populations and making sure that we're getting trees back into cities because of all the many benefits of trees in cities. We have an urban forester in southern Nevada out of our Las Vegas office. She worked diligently with our partners, and they brought just under $19 million to the state of Nevada in multiple project areas in order to do just that. So there will be a lot of tree planting in all of the highest risk areas. We have some programs for workforce development, making sure that contractors know how to be trained in tree pruning, tree planting, and that's actually translated into all the languages necessary for the workforce that's out there. There's a lot of heat island mitigation programs and then food security programs, orchards and food gardens to make sure that people who can't afford to buy their food in grocery stores have that available. So we're very excited about this program. One of the big highlights that you wouldn't see from just a snippet of our accomplishments, but we were able to reach 500,000 additional residents this year through having additional funding. And looking and widening the program to different areas, which is actually about 700,000 over our 10-year average. So we're really trying to get out there and reach people and make sure that we are doing these projects in urban forests where they really matter. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I believe our first question is coming from Carson City. We have Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you so much for that presentation and for the work that you are clearly doing. I can see a lot of benefits, especially in the urban forestry, and I can tell you are busy every single day working on all of these issues. So my question is about the fire season. Last season was wonderful. I could go outside during the summer and not have to mask up. But my question is that going to make next fire season worse because there's more unburned fuels, or what kind of impact will that have on next year?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair, through you to Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch. Again, for the record, Casey. It's a little early in the prediction models. We are looking, the National Interagency Fire Center is taking all of the data that's out there, looking at the information and trying to tell us what it's going to look like. But if we're looking at historical averages, yes, our fire season will be likely larger next year. It depends on whether we do end up getting a snowpack at the lower elevations that will pack down some of those annual invasive species. But historically, we follow the flows in the rivers across the state. We take that data and we look at our fire history and what it looks like. And so it's like the 3 years following our wettest years where we have the most devastating fire seasons, and we are headed right into it. So I am hoping for DRI to seed some more clouds and make sure that we get a lot of moisture. But we are really nervous about this upcoming fire season. We will give a better presentation when we get some better models as it comes into the fire season.
Thank you so much, State Forester Fire Warden Casey. And again, that speaks to the importance of some of the legislation we had, like Senator Goicoechea's cloud seeding legislation that he had with DRI and the great work that's being done around the state. And we really appreciate all the work being done by your office. I believe our Vice Chair had a question as well.
Thank you, Chair. And this is not a burning question. Sorry. And are you laughing or coughing? Anyway, First, I wanted to thank you for the information around the Fire Adapted Summit, because I know there's one coming up. I want to say it's in late February over at the University of Nevada, Reno campus. And then, are there any sort of those summits also happening in our more rural districts, or are you partnering with any of the community colleges or the tribal communities in trying to do those summits as well? Because it sounds like it's working. Great job with the fire adaptation services.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair, through you to Assemblywoman Anderson.
And you can go direct. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And again, for the record, Casey. The FAN Summit brings together everyone across the state in the FireWise communities. It was very similar to the Fire Safe Council summits that were held historically. That is what this is. So it's bringing together the leaders in those communities who are seeing the vision with the people, the contractors, the Forest Service, the BLM, and the partners who are there to help, and how can we help, and what are your issues. So that's the point of the summit. They did put it up here this year. I think historically it's been held in Reno. I do think that they're looking at moving across the state, but this particular summit is for all members. So anyone is able to join. There's a lot of great information and value for those community leaders. That's one of the big things. We had I would like to say we still have her because she moved into a different position. But I greatly attest this to having an excellent fan coordinator, Kelly Nevels, who just really went all over the state and talked to these community spark plugs, we call them, trying to make sure that they had what they need to be able to understand their risk and how are they going to act. They do have plans. They have community defense plans. They're looking at the community wildfire protection plans, and they're looking at them, but they don't always know how to implement what's on those pages. And so this was a big plug for her. She unfortunately or fortunately moved into our stewardship program, so we are filling this program now, but she's still with us. She's still helping the program. She'll help through the summit and beyond, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. And then a separate question, if I may, Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. And you also mentioned about the food desert or food security programs. Could you go into that a little bit more? And is that, again, statewide, or is that in very specific areas?
Thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Casey Casey, State Forester Fire Warden. They're in designated areas. They were actually applications that went into the National Infrastructure Law pool that were awarded nationally. I do believe there were some awarded both in Reno and in Clark County, the two fastest growing heat centers in the nation. So they were awarded that way. We do have a competitive process that was also given to us. So we actually are pushing those out right now to get additional applications. So it's anyone who applies, and then we go through a certification process to make sure that they qualify. And then obviously we have to pick winners and losers because we don't have enough money to give to everyone. But these programs look to be sustainable in the long term, at least during the portion of the infrastructure bill and hopefully beyond.
So then, a quick follow-up, I promise. Is that then distributed through the food banks or a 3 Square in Clark County, or is it done specifically from smaller communities or even from a household? I mean, I'm just kind of confused about the logistics, which I realize is not in our purview.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, and again, for the record, Casey Casey. It varies. So each grant application tells us what they're going to do and how they're going to put those. So we could actually get you the 2 applications if you'd like to dig further in that did apply and were awarded for these types of programs. So basically, they are pushing a program. We liked the program. It actually was awarded at a national level, so the reviewers looked at it and thought it was excellent. Nevada was very, very successful, and again, I attest that to having great leadership in Cayenne down in the southern part of the state running this program. She really worked hard to get all of our cooperators in a room. When we knew it was going to move out to the cooperators going nationally, Nevada hasn't always been successful in national competitive grant programs. And so this was a big win for us. We were one of the highest awarded states, so we were very proud of that partnership and those programs moving forward.
Great. Thank you so much, and congratulations. That's awesome. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I believe Senator Gokachia has a question as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Casey, just a couple of things. Touring the state, especially where we've done some significant fuel reductions in highway right-of-ways and under transmission corridors and even power lines. In a lot of those, we don't seem to be we're allowing them to come back in with the native species, and as I run across the state, I see miles and miles of 100-yard strips that are nothing but cheatgrass. Are we not better served? I realize nobody wants to talk about non-native, but with more fire retardant species in those, all we're doing is creating a huge wick. I think when you drive for 50 miles and there's 100 yards of cheatgrass on the side of the road, a chain drag, a hot bearing, and we've got instant fire, and it's going to get a running start at that native vegetation once you get out of the cleared areas. Is there any focus on why aren't we going to a non-native, more fire retardant species?
Thank you for the question, Senator Gokachia. Again, for the record, Casey Casey. Yes, that is a focus of the Division of Forestries. We don't just push on natives. It's harder to get natives established back into these, especially as we've seen return intervals of 1 to 5 years of fire. We are losing ground primarily to brome grasses, cheatgrass in the northern part of the state. So, yeah, we promote the use of seeding and herbicide application. I know there are trade-offs as we're going through this, but all of our programs are actually looking at, unfortunately, all of these fuel breaks are not ours. So I don't know if every program is doing the same thing, but those that we look at, we try to ensure, especially when working with cooperators as well, that we, one, are reducing the fuel load, but then we're actually making sure that something better comes back in. So we look at herbicide application quick, and then we look at seeding with most often non-natives in to give us a footing back in, and then a transition back into natives if we're able to do that over time. So all of these projects are long-term in nature, and they actually take a long time to implement to get back to a native a vegetative type. So we do push that. I know the Nevada Native Seed Group actually also pushed that in the native seed strategy across the U.S. and the Nevada seed strategy that we adopted as a state and local entities. We definitely don't just push natives as it had been historically sometimes said, but we've always had better success with interim non-natives to make sure that we actually gain ground.
Thank you, and just thank you, Madam Chair. And just kind of along those lines, I just want to go back and echo your concerns about what this next fire season. As I toured the state, driving down here yesterday, we haven't had any kind of a snow load. We've got tumbleweeds and cheatgrass standing at 2 to 3 feet, and none of us can predict the weather, what kind of spring summer we're going to have, but we are poised to have a huge fire year, and that 1,300 could go well too. We're going to put some more zeros to that number. We know that coming forward. So thank you, and thank you for the good work you do.
Thank you so much, Senator. I believe we're going to return to Carson City with a question from Assemblyman Gurr.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. It was great. NV Energy had some kind of program for fuels reductions along power lines. Is that through you or with you or in concert with you? And I'm hearing that they may be pulling out of that. Rumors, but.
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Gurr. Again, for the record, Casey. It was originally started with state funding through SB 508 and a matching grant with NV Energy. So we did work together in the initial output of the program. It grew much beyond the money that we had. So we no longer have the same matching funds. We went through our portion of that a long time ago, many years ago. So what we were actually doing together, so NV Energy has the, I don't know what it is, they're responsible for the right-of-ways underneath their power lines, and they have a vested interest in trying to reduce risk from power shutoffs due to fires coming through, but also fire starts from their infrastructure in those right-of-ways. So they had started a program looking at SDG&E, PG&E to the west of us and making sure that they were reducing that risk in those areas. Through SB 508, we matched it because we have vested interest in a larger area outside of just their right-of-ways. We wanted to look at some of these transmission lines span great areas that go through very high risk, fire risk zones. So we wanted to make sure that these right-of-way entries actually were fuel breaks. So we widened a lot of those. We had foresters on staff making sure that we were, providing my brain just went out. Making sure that we were prescribing them to be long-term. So we were using not just treatments, but putting down, it's gone. Anyway, what we were just talking about. But so yes, we did have a partnership in that. Originally, some of those grants to the local fire districts came through us. It grew much bigger than that through NV Energy. And we have heard that they have cut back through some of the fire districts, but I don't have any more information than that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fire Warden and Assemblyman. Do we have any more questions from the committee? Okay. Seeing none, thank you so much for your participation today. We really appreciated having you join us from Carson City. And I'm sure as more questions come up later, we can always reach out as a committee. I did want to, before we move on to the next presentation, have Senator Scheibel provide a brief introduction with her district number and her interest in natural resources.
Thank you so much, Chair Pazina, and thank you everybody for joining us at our meeting today. I apologize for being tardy. I was at my day job and had to make a court appearance before I could get down here. So I look forward to reviewing the presentations that I missed after this meeting, but I have been in the Senate since 2018. I've served on the Natural Resources Committee for the last 3 regular sessions and the last 2 interims, or their equivalents, and I'm looking forward to joining Natural Resources again in this interim. I absolutely love the state of Nevada and everything she has to offer. So I'm just happy to be part of this team and to work with all of you going forward.
Thank you so much, Senator, and we're looking forward to having you chair the Subcommittee on Public Lands as well.
I wasn't sure if that had happened yet, so thank you. I also look forward to that.
Congratulations. With that, we thank the Fire Warden again so much for her presentation, Senator Scheibel for her introduction, and we are going to move on to item 9 on today's agenda, the presentation on water resource management. It is our final presentation today, and we'll hear a presentation from the SAS Institute. We have Ms. Julie Espy, the Senior Industry Consultant, joining us. We look forward to your presentation, and please proceed when you're ready.
Can everyone see that okay? All right. Good morning. Thank you so much, Chair and Committee, for having us come speak with you today. We really appreciate the opportunity. As you said, my name is Julie Espy. I am the National Director for Water Quality and Data Solutions, Environment and Data Solutions for SAS. I have a long background in working in government. I worked primarily for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection for over 20 years, where I worked in pretty much all of the water programs that they managed in the state, as well as worked in local government and in the private sector for a short time. I grew up in Oklahoma, but I now reside in Tallahassee, Florida. So it's beautiful here in Nevada. I really hope to get to see more of it while I'm here.
Nevada.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't spell my name. My name is, it's Julieespy for the record. So here at, we have, SAS is a data analytics company, basically. I want to try and give you a picture of kind of who we are and what we do as we speak this morning. So our company actually started at North Carolina State University in 1976, so almost 50 years ago. And in that time, we've really grown into a company where we serve over 1,600 different departments and agencies in government across the world. As you can see, we're actually in 134 countries across the world. And what we really do is as I said, we're a software and data analytics company. We want to empower state agencies to do more with their data. Most state agencies are working kind of on the left side in those blue sectors. They're out gathering data for various purposes, whether it be trying to track changes in environmental conditions or determining how much water they have available for various uses, reporting on drinking water because it's very important for environmental health purposes. And all of that data gathering has to be reported, whether it be to a state agency, to the legislature, or to the EPA, up to the federal agency as well. And all of that it takes a lot of work and a lot of resources and efforts. So we really try to work with state agencies to help them do that maybe more effectively, more efficiently, get more out of their data. I know that all state agencies have become very accustomed and very good at reporting on current conditions, but we really want to help them get more insights, predict what may be happening in the future, why something is happening, where it could happen next, and help the programs really be more enhanced. I just want to give one example where we are doing that. We're helping, we have the Healthy Nevada project. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but they are using our SAS data analytics platform where they're taking genetic data and health records, literally billions of data points, and really leveraging that information and getting those insights that I was mentioning to help promote better personal and better health for the citizens in that region of the state. So one of the things that we often hear, these are kind of common themes. As I said, I'm a national director, so I talk to state agencies across the U.S., all different types. And these agencies are all reporting on a variety of environmental topics. And people really want to know, is their water safe to drink? Are the rivers safe to fish and swim in? Can I go out and recreate? And this is often means that data comes from multiple agencies. So it's maybe not just the water division or the environmental agency that's collecting that information. They may need to get information from a Department of Health or a Fish and Wildlife type service and be able to report on that information better. And that's one of the things that SAS is really good at. We help them with that collaboration, bringing in data into a data platform that gives them reliable information. So then you're also building that public trust when those results are reported out. Some examples are a biennial integrated report. So that's a requirement that environmental agencies have under the Clean Water Act, where they must report every 2 years on the conditions of the waters in the state. And that's something where if you can infuse some automation or bring together those pieces of information from those different agencies, as I said, you can do that, and the public and everyone can really trust the results that are reported out in that biennial report. We have worked, I said, with government agencies across the U.S., and many of them are using our platform. So we are providing them the software. We also can provide services to help them do some of these analysis, but really we're trying to empower the agencies to do some of this themselves. And some of the things they've looked at is identifying sources of pollutants. I think we heard some conversations in some of the previous presentations this morning about how valuable that is, and being able to follow those trends, whether it be in water quality or water quantity, and being able to predict what's going to happen into the future. Looking at data gaps in monitoring. I know that as I speak to, I actually administered an environmental program for many years, and I know we were always needing more data, but needing to prioritize where we did that monitoring, where we got the data to make it the most valuable. So that's an analysis that programs have been using our software to do. Also looking at environmental stressors. And when I talk about environmental stressors, I'm actually speaking about wastewater discharges or stormwater that's reaching the lakes and rivers in the state. And being able to look at the effects of those stressors on the water quality. And then being able to develop those restoration strategies that would be most effective. So also running analytics on those restoration strategies to determine which ones would be most effective, say, for that particular water body or in that region of the state. Whoops. So I'll talk about a few projects where we've actually in our SAS platform, so you can kind of see what it looks like, what our reports and analytics can look like. This was a project that we collaborated with the University of Florida as well as the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. It was under the Central Florida Water Initiative, which was a collaborative water planning effort that they were taking on, meaning the local governments, the water management districts, were all looking to figure out what is water going to look like in this corridor between Orlando and Tampa over the next 20, 30 years. It's a vital part of the state that is growing rapidly, and they knew that they needed to get a handle on what water availability was going to look like into the future. So we were able to help them bring in different types of information and run analytics on the number of permits that were being issued, who was issuing them, how much water was being allocated in those permits, as well as were they actually using that allocation. If someone was allocated 100 gallon per day usage in their permit, were they using 50 or were they maybe using 200, so that they had a better picture of what the use actually looked like in that region of the state. The next example is an example of integrated data, and I talked about collaboration. This is an example where we took in data that is reported up to the EPA. It's reported through various programs. So this one report shows you information about water quality monitoring data. In that top right graph, you can actually select a particular pollutant or a time period and look at what that looks like over time. You can also do it by particular watershed if you didn't want to see what it looks like statewide. If you're interested in a particular area in the state, the map to the left, you could click on a single watershed and it actually would update all of these graphics on that report. So you could also see which MPDS or wastewater facilities are in that watershed, what their data looks like, are they in compliance with their permits or not. And as well as the donut kind of graphic in the bottom right is actually grant funding. All states receive funding from the EPA for various purposes, and this can actually allow you to see how much funding is being used for what different types of projects, whether you want to see statewide or in a particular watershed. Kind of a one-stop shop. This next example is where we were able to work with them to automate some of their reporting. The agency has an annual reporting requirement on tracking the progress of water quality improvement in this region of the state. So what you're seeing is a map of multiple sub-watersheds, bless you, and this is a report that automates it. So they were spending months of time gathering data, running it through Excel spreadsheets, and then trying to report out on it. This is a picture on the right is all of the subwatersheds. The two graphics on the left and the two graphics on the right actually show the status, like tracking the progress. So the ones in blue say they're meeting their allocation. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. The pollutants have been reduced in those subwatersheds. However, the ones in orange and yellow are lagging behind. And so that lets them know that they need to be doing more investments in whether it be stormwater or wastewater or even agricultural best management practices, trying to better control the pollutants that are entering the watershed there. And the bar graphs and the table actually give you the detailed data of whether or not they're meeting their goals or and what the actual data look like, the actual numbers. The last example that I'll speak about is our flood prediction and preparedness solution. We are able to take historical rainfall data, if it's available, if it's been collected, and then predict using our flood inundation model. So we build a model using that historical data and then be able to predict within a 6-hour window where and how much water is going to accumulate, say, in an urban area. Whether you're looking at a 1-inch rainfall or a 3-inch rainfall, you'll be able to better understand where you may need to, say, deploy generators for lift stations or close roads or even perhaps evacuate people if an area is going to be, maybe even have a flash flood or an area that would gather a lot of water over time. As I said, we can do that with data that's already being collected, or there are sensors that are very inexpensive, and we can help a community understand where best to deploy those sensors and get, the most information and then provide them with the model. And that's all I have today. I appreciate your time, and I'll take any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you so much. We're going to start here in Las Vegas with Senator Golkachia, and then we're going to move to Carson City with Vice Chair Anderson, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm not very techy at the risk of everybody laughing in the room. But anyway, it sounds like you're more of a software company, and you're making the software available. But I think here in this state, especially when we deal with water quantity, again, it's only as good as the data you can put into it. And, I think most of us in this state will agree there are some areas we've got more than enough data, but most of the state doesn't have enough. We don't know whether we're declining. So How do you fix that? Or, I mean, you're just going to sell a software package, it's only as good as what you put in it. That doesn't give us any answers.
Right. Madam Chair? Okay. Julie Espy for the record. So one of the things that I spoke about was a gap analysis. So that is something that our analytics platform can do for a state. So you said you have areas that don't have enough data. We could help you understand where those areas are and also help you establish a prioritization or a monitoring plan. Say you only have a small amount of resources that you can actually deploy in that region to collect data. We could help you plan that out so that you could collect the information and data. That's one of the tools that we could provide.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So then what you're saying, you could at least take it apart and say, hey, this is what you need to know first before we can move forward. Might be helpful.
Again, Julie Espy for the record. Yes, sir. Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Very interesting information. And I'm so happy that the Senator brought up that very question of, we're only as good as what the information is that is provided. So I'm not sure if you're able to answer this question or not. It has to do with slide 7. In particular, when you were speaking about the evaluation of water use when it comes to the number of wells. With that information, when you were going through that, explaining it, was this public wells? Was it private wells? Was it the partnership sometimes where it's private and public? I'm just, because we know that the wells, and I don't mean Wells, Nevada, I do mean wells for water, has been an issue of concern for many, many, many years. So just wondering what that process was.
Again, Julie Espy for the record. Yes, it was a combination where it was mostly public wells, that are permitted for either drinking water or public well systems, as well as agricultural uses. But where they could, they did include private wells. I know oftentimes it's hard to know, exactly where those are, but where some of the water management districts did have information, they did include that as well.
Thank you. And follow-up, Chair? I'm just going to forge ahead.
Yep, please proceed.
Okay. Thank you so much. And so with that, was there also any discussion, and again, I realize this is in a different state, of the wells that are no longer producing? Because we have many of those issues as well. Was that part of the report, or I don't know if that's getting too specific or not?
Madam Chair. Again, Julie Espy for the record. Yes, it was considered, certainly those capped wells. That was part of the analysis. There's always been, hearsay that there's perhaps overpumping in some regions of the state. If anyone's heard about sinkholes collapsing in Florida, things like that. So that was part of the analysis, honestly, is looking at where some of those wells aren't producing anymore, perhaps why they aren't producing, and why the analysis was important, because they knew that that region of the state is really growing.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much for your answer, and thank you, Vice Chair. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Any questions in Carson City? Okay. I'm not seeing any right now. Ms. Espy, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And before we move into more public comments, I did just want to, again, thank the committee who's already asked so many wonderful questions today, who's been working so hard in the interim to prepare for this. If you have any subjects that you'd like to see covered during the course of the interim, I would love for you to send those by email to me by the end of the week. I would really appreciate it if you'd like to send those to me, if you'd like to copy Mr. Sinisbeck as well. I look forward to working with all of you and also covering any subjects that you might have in mind. As you can imagine, we'll be talking about water conservation a lot. We have a lot of other subjects that the policy advisors and I have been batting around, but we want to make sure that we include the committee. So please send those my way. All right, with that said, we're going to move on to public comment, item 10 on the agenda. We've arrived at that last item. It's our second period for public comment. If you'd like to call in, please dial 888-475-4499. When prompted, please enter meeting ID 828-4539-8349, and then press pound sign. Broadcast and production services staff will indicate to you when it's your turn to speak. Please remember to clearly state and spell your name and limit your comment to 2 minutes. I see we have public comment here in Las Vegas. Mr. Donnelly, it's always good to see you. And I believe we have some in Carson City as well, but we'll start down here in Las Vegas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Patrick Donnelly, Great Basin Director at the Center for Biological Diversity. Glad to be with you for yet another interim session. Just wanted to raise an issue for this committee that I would hope this committee can consider taking action on during the interim. And this is an issue that is going to affect the water supply in Nevada, and that is the emergence of the lithium industry here. My organization and I think the general consensus is we need to electrify our power grid, and that involves electric vehicles and battery storage. So we're going to need lithium. And we do support domestic mining of lithium in order to ensure that the highest environmental standards are held in our lithium supply chain. However, Nevada is the epicenter of this, and there are over 70 projects proposed in Nevada right now. It's a project pipeline that's like 10 times the size of the gold mining project pipeline. The scale of the potential for all these projects to get built out is just enormous. It's really staggering. And fully half of these projects are brine proposals, which would use groundwater for extracting lithium. There are certain places where this could be more impactful to the environment and to communities, and there are certain places where it could be less impactful to the environment and to communities. The state of Nevada has an opportunity to help shape that future by creating policies, or at the very least studying, where this lithium should be produced and where might be less desirable for it to be produced. Without a proactive approach from the state, you'll be at the behest of BLM and the federal government as far as deciding which lithium mines get built. And so I think this committee, perhaps with one of your BDRs, could consider advancing a study on where the appropriate places to build lithium mines might be in this state, so we can have some level of control over the emergence of the lithium industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Donnelly, and we will move to Carson City.
Thank you, Chair Pizzina and committee. My name is Kaylee Musso. I'm the Legislative Liaison for the Department of Wildlife. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Division of Forestry for their presentation and their work on the landscape. I also couldn't pass up the chance to put a plug in for wildfire restoration and rehabilitation. It's an important mitigation tool. But I won't take up any of your time. I know you'll hear more about that as the interim goes on, so we look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Musso. And BPS, do we have anyone on the phones?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
All right, thank you so much. Not seeing anyone else coming to the table in Las Vegas or in Carson City. One last check, BPS.
Thank you, Chair. The line is open and working, but we have no callers at this time.
All right, thank you so much. That will conclude item 10, public comment for this meeting. And that concludes our meeting for today. Members, I'm really looking forward to working with you over these next several months as we tackle discussions on important natural resources issues. Please do send me, and we thank you for those that came forward with issues during public comment. We look forward to receiving the issues from you, Mr. Stennis-Beck, and myself for committee members on items that we can tackle during the interim. Before we adjourn, I want to provide advance notice to the committee that our last meeting in August, which will also be our work session, I am planning to chair that meeting from Carson City. It's my hope that all members will be able to attend from Carson City for this meeting. In the meantime, though, our next meeting will be held on Thursday, February 29th. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.